All right, Greg, we are live for another episode. So I'm kind of echoey because I'm in this new room and it's kind of loud, so I apologize about that. But we are talking today about lawsuits. We're talking about people starting to argue, things getting a little bit more litigious. People start getting heels start digging into the sand. And so, Greg, why don't we jump into, do you just want to jump right into a question, or do you want to give a couple scenarios first? But basically,
what I'd like to do here, Paul, is I want to give a scenario, and it's going to be multi-pronged, but in the end, it pretty much all ends up at the same spot. And so here it is. You have been working with some buyers, found them a home, everything was great. You actually went to a closing. Maybe there was 10 or 20 days or 30 days of possession. Everything was fine. You hadn't heard anything from the buyers. Hopefully you've been staying in touch with them though, because you want referrals. But in the meantime, you get a call one day, and out of the blue, it's from the buyers and they are not happy. Matter of fact, they are downright upset, and they are kind of like shooting at you, but maybe they know really that it's not you, but they're still shooting at you. And it can take the form of I'm going to just throw out some scenarios. The house can be an absolute disaster, a mess, junk everywhere. There could be damage, thousands of dollars of damage to things that when they were moving out, they just didn't take care of. It could be tons of debris, like where the buyers may have to go rent dumpsters at $500 a pop and may need 2 or 3 of them. It could be the sellers didn't move out. They're still there. It could be, just a multitude of things that did not go right after you had done everything right. You brought it to a closing. You have done your job as a real estate agent. But now they're coming to you. And you can do a couple of things. You can get defensive, which I would not recommend. I would take the approach personally that, all right, slow down. Let's kind of go through this here. Let's see what we can do. Let's see where we can go. But let's assume at some point in the conversation, they say, well, shouldn't you or 5-Star be responsible to fix this? Like can't 5-Star get an attorney to sue the seller, go after them for us? I mean, we're your client, right? I mean, where are you in helping me in all of this? And you can feel a little bit uncomfortable at that moment, but in reality, what you have to be able to do is to say, look, I list and I sell houses. I don't deal with all of this type of thing that you're talking about here right now. We don't have any legal responsibilities for this. Obviously, I feel horrible and I want to help in whatever way I can. And let me see what I can do to, let's get the problem fixed, right? Let's deal with the issue. Let's get in there. But secondly, what you don't want to do, what I really hope you will never do, is say, well, let me call my broker and see if we can get an attorney to sue the seller for you. Please don't go there, because that is not going to happen. And Paul and I will explain this a little bit further. Can you imagine, as a broker or an agent, that in every scenario that we have, and it could be from a buyer, we can be on the buyer side sometimes, we're on the seller side sometimes. If every time there was a break, that 5-Star somehow had to be responsible, and we had to go hire an attorney to fix this scenario for your client, we'd be done. We'd be toast. It'd be over, and it'd be a quick bang, and we'd be out of here.
well, if it was some kind of industry standard thing where brokers were now not only helping create the contracts, but now brokers were responsible to execute contracts and to enforce contracts, brokerage would be tremendously expensive.
So let's flip it around for a second and let's look at, you're now working with a seller. And this one probably doesn't have quite as many scenarios, but in the end, let's just say for some reason, the appraisal was done, it worked, it was fine. The inspections went through, they're past the 10 days, everything's cool, and you're heading towards a close, and the buyer, just for whatever reason, gets cold feet. We've even seen it where a buyer has died, car crash, heart attack. The seller, again, is going to probably go to you, not necessarily that you got to fix it immediately, but they're looking to you for guidance and counsel. So don't be defensive. Once again, if this happens, again, what you want to do is say, well, let's look into this. Let me dissect this. Let me talk to the other agent. Let me find out all the details here. We're in the very early stages. But once again, if the seller says to you, I want you as my broker to go sue that buyer, it's not going to happen. We are not going to do that. And again, once again, it's not something that brokers do, and it's not just us. It's pretty much every broker. I've never heard of a broker stepping in and suing on behalf of the buyers or the sellers. Paul, anything that you want to add in that area?
I think that people might say things like, and again, maybe a lot of people watching here already have their heads wrapped around this, but they go, well then what's Eno do, Greg?
Right. That's the next area.
What does Eno even stand for, Greg? What is Eno? I always hear brokers talk about Eno.
Okay, well, Eno is errors and omissions. So think about those two words. Where do errors and omissions take place? Typically on the buy, sell, the purchase contract. And typically it happens with the buyer far more than it does the seller. And something is talked about, and through discussions or other interruptions, you fail to write something down that clearly states what you and the buyer had agreed to. In some way, we failed, you failed, and therefore it comes to the broker. And by the way, there are lots of steps before E&O kicks in, Paul. I mean, we've seen this multiple times where there might be a stopgap measure. And I know that a lot of I'm going to say the top agents, if they blow it and they know they blew it, many of them will step up to the plate and they will write the check to make this thing go away.
Yeah.
They're not going to call us,
yeah,
broker, and ask us to write that check.
So when someone like, let's go back here for a second here to your previous example of your seller or your buyer asking you to sue the other party, and they say,
Yep.
we don't really, we're not a legal company, we're a brokerage. We took two people, we got them together, we created a contract, but now it's up to you, buyer and seller, to make sure this contract is executed properly. We're going to help guide you. So let's just say this goes south. Your seller that wants you to sue, your buyer that wants you to sue is so mad at you that now the relationship is damaged because you said we're not going to sue them. 5-Star's not going to sue them. And they go, well, great. Guess what? I'm suing you. I'm suing 5-Star, and I'm suing the sellers.
Well, they may threaten that. And
let's say they do.
So, well, and again, let's just say, let me kind of frame this how it kind of goes. When you do as many transactions as we do at 5-Star, we'll be probably between 9,000 and 10,000 transactions this year alone. There are going to be some unhappy situations, and we will get at this moment, if something goes wrong, everybody says, I'm going to have my attorney, we'll be in touch, or we'll be suing you. And typically, in most cases, most people don't have an attorney in their hip pocket. most people are hoping that if they threaten that somebody will write a check and fix it. But in many of these situations, the agent has to decide, sometimes you haven't done anything wrong. And I know that myself and other very good agents throughout the years, if you can fix something for a couple $100 versus allowing this thing to fester and grow and get ugly, I mean, for Pete's sakes, use your common sense here and go, I need to make this go away. I need to make these people happy. I want them to be able to refer business to me in the future. I don't want to lose this as a future source for referrals.
Right.
Then quickly and fix it. But if they're talking about, you know, some gargantuan sum of money, they may threaten. We may even get letters from their attorney. But until they've filed a lawsuit, until they've so we get a document in the mail, certified mail, or delivered by a court authority, we don't have anything to give our E&O company at that moment yet, do we? It's only when we get that lawsuit in our hand that we're the E&O company. But lots of things, like I said, we can work on things. You can pay to have a letter. You could help the people pay for a letter that goes out, maybe a threatening letter, to see if you can get somebody to move it. But we don't escalate that right up to the E&O company. This is where Don and Eric and also the broker support team can work with you and help you work through some of these things if you get one of these calls. But E&O is not there to sue the other party. E&O only protects 5-star. E&O is only going to pay out for, it's going to protect you as the agent, and it's going to protect us as the broker. If there's a payout, and what we have at 5-star right now, which a lot of companies don't have, is we have something called first dollar defense, which means that the minute this goes to a lawsuit, remember now, you can have legal costs in between that doesn't get covered by E&O. It's only when the lawsuit comes in that E&O kicks in, and E&O then will take it from there, and they'll hire the lawyer.
E&O is defense. E&O is protecting and defending. E&O is not an aggressor.
No. E&O is strictly a defense position where we can hire an attorney who's helped us many times in the past. He's very good at it. But there are some times when the agent has missed something. Remember now, errors and omissions. It does happen. And we have had to write, not us, but our insurance company has had to write a check for up to $50,000 to fix something. And
we've had some really, really crazy ones. I don't know how much we want to get into all of those specifics.
No, I don't want to go down that road. The purpose of this live stream today to me was I wanted to give the agents the information so they know what to do if they get one of these ugly calls. And I wanted them to understand the difference of what E&O is for. And then the client wants you to go after somebody. Well, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that's for a homeowner or a home buy, as for a buyer or a seller to pursue each other with their own attorneys if that's where they want to go.
Paul, I got more scenarios. Unless you had something.
Are we moving on to a different type of scenario, or where are we going now?
No, this is still, I'm going to use one here. We've had this come up where you have a listing and showing, and the sellers call you up furious once again. And something they claim has been stolen from the property during the showings or the open house. And this one is a little bit more hairy and dicey in that, well, clearly you need to help your people. So you're going to try to, once again, say, let's look at this. Let me get some information. Let's do a little research here so that they know you're going to do something, and then make sure you follow through quickly. However, once again, this is not a situation where Eno, I think maybe can step in this scenario, or our liability insurance could step in. But the key really to this, to prevent this, is to make sure when you put a property on the market that you have put something into these sellers in writing that says, please remove anything of value that you have. If you've got things that are irreplaceable, things that are expensive, you should really remove those from the home before we have one person come through this property. And so I just want you to remember that statement. I always told people when I listen.
Medications.
Yeah, medication, to make sure they lock down medication, could be weapons, anything like down that road. Another one that I want to throw in here, and you'll love this one, Paul, because you know it's one of my favorite topics, is EMDs.
Mm-hmm. Usually what I do is I give my dad an EMD for Christmas. I'm like, here you go. Here's an EMD.
Yeah. So, think about this, that,
but this is a big one though, real quick. EMDs have become, and I have been talking about it a little bit, but EMDs are becoming, for some reason, EMDs are like, we have so many EMD disputes now.
So let me ask the question to all the agents. Who is responsible to verify that whatever was written on that buy-sell is actually done? So if it says on the buy-sell agreement that the buyer will do a $5,000 deposit within 2 days, who's responsible to verify that? If you're the buyer's agent, should you verify that? If you're the seller's agent, should you verify that? I think if in either situation, I think that it's up to the agents to verify. Oh,
Your phone, Paul?
yes. Am I there? Okay. It just said failed. So anyway, so the point is that I want to make sure that all agents understand you're both responsible to verify the EMD came in. Here's what happens.
Guys, really quickly, a photograph of a check is not verification, because what happens most of the time is agents and buyers are racing around. And so a buyer writes a check from their kitchen table, grabs their phone, snaps a photo of the check, sends a text message to their realtor with a photo of the check, and then sends you a photo of the check on the client's table telling you that's verification of the EMD. That is like that's like a photograph of, you might as well be photographing Monopoly money.
Right. Picture this is kind of like when you were a kid and there was that game called Hot Potato. In reality, you don't want that hot potato sitting at your desk with you. So if I were the selling agent, I would email if I were the listing agent, I would email the other agent and say, hey, I'm just calling to confirm that the deposit came in and it's deposited and it's in your bank account. Mm-hmm. That moment, if they say yes, they own it. On the other hand, if you as a buyer's agent fail to check on this and you allow this thing to go on and there's no money sitting there and the sellers and the seller's agent believe there's a $5,000 deposit there and it's not really there, and then 3 weeks, 4 weeks into this, the deal falls through for a non-contingent basis, and the seller says, we want the deposit, and you say, well, I never got it. It's like, well, you just signed up to reimburse a deposit because you had not, you should have had knowledge, or you did have knowledge and you did not tell the other side. In reality, you should confirm it. If it's not there, you have an obligation to call the seller and tell them, the listing agent, hey, I just want you to know that the buyer has failed to give me the deposit on time per the buy-sell agreement, and I'm putting in your court as to what you want to do. as far as I'm concerned, if I was in that situation and they failed on point number one, I'd be canceling that deal and saying, we better go find another buyer. If they can't even do the simplest of things, like come up with a deposit, what's the rest of the transaction going to look like? So Paul, any thoughts?
Right. So 100% agree with you. It is always good. I would do this in writing, somewhere in writing, request verification that EMD has been deposited or been collected and deposited. Like Greg says, that if you ask that and then they say the answer is yes, they very well may be lying to you, but you are no longer responsible because you've done your part. And now the other person's responsible because they've lied to you that it was or wasn't deposited. Okay. So we want to do the best we can. Now, if you're going to be really, really intense and you're going to ask to see bank deposit records, I'm not sure how quickly you're going to see brokerages jumping out and showing you bank deposit slips. That can be kind of difficult. Just to be honest with you, if we had 9,400 requests for EMD proof of verification, can you imagine that one, Greg? Are we willing to do that?
Well,
pretty hard. You're going to have to hire a new employee.
Yeah. It would be, what would be nice is if, and again, I have purchased a couple of buildings here in the last couple of years. Man, these people have asked me for verification of the money in the bank. They want to see it, the bank statement.
Yeah.
They want proof of the deposit.
This is one reason, really quickly here, this is one reason why I think personally I'm an advocate for things like digital earnest deposits, because they can be tracked easily. You can get notifications saying the EMD has been received, EMD has been sent. So I like the idea of this digital EMD thing versus how many times have you been told that an EMD was lost in the mail and just never arrived because the post office lost it?
Right. We've had situations, Paul, where the public has said, well, we dropped the check off. Well,
yeah,
where did you
lost it? Sorry.
And
they've had them say, we're aware you never took the money out of our account but we gave you the check, and since you never deposited it, we gave it to you, you're on the hook for the $1,000 or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where I wanted to go from here was, Greg, we're seeing more and more where you're having buyers and sellers, and I think I brought this up before, I'm going to bring it up again, but you're having one party who feels as though they were treated unfairly. Maybe the other person in the transaction has the legal right to exit the transaction, but they're not buying the official story. They think there's some sort of other backstory going on and that someone's trying to pull a fast one here. And so they refuse to release the EMD.
Oh, yeah.
They refuse to sign the mutual release. So even though, hypothetically, Greg, you're buying a building, you on the 9th day, you send a termination notice on an addendum, and then you also send along with it a mutual release saying you would like your full earnest money deposit back because, section ... on the purchase agreement gave you the right to terminate based upon inspection results. And so you use that ability. And that seller goes, yeah, but I'll tell you what, I know Greg's brother-in-law, and I saw him at Golf League 2 weeks ago, and it sounds like he may have found a property he liked better, and that's the real reason he's terminating. Because those are the kind of stories we hear. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting story, but this is the reason they're terminating, because of the inspections. And so they're refusing to sign the mutual release, which means, based upon Michigan escrow law, if we're holding, let's just say hypothetically, a $2,000 earnest money deposit, we see a trail here that shows that this buyer has every right to terminate for their reason, but the seller says, not so fast. What are we to do, Greg?
Well, at that moment, once we have been told that they are denying us the ability to release the funds, the law says that we can't release the funds, even though we know the buyer did exactly what they said they were supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Well, you can imagine that if the buyer doesn't understand this, that they're going to be very frustrated.
They're and if they beyond upset.
Yeah. And if they need to go home,
what they're going to say is that my realtor told me my earnest money deposit was refundable based upon the results of the inspections, and during that inspection period that my EMD was refundable.
So you need to add in your language that every now and then there's a situation where a seller is not buying what we are showing them, and they may cause us a disruption. And the only solution that's open to the buyer is small claims court. And,
and because of
we
this,
tell people nobody wants to do it, but it is the easiest, fastest way to get a deposit back. And because we can't do it. I can't write checks out to all these buyers that have deals fallen through. And by the way, right now, we're seeing the amount of fall throughs it used to be around the 10-11% range. Currently, it's sitting at around 15% of all transactions that are written are falling apart today, for whatever reason.
So what we're doing, because we're seeing more of this, and no one wants, and I can tell you right now, Greg and I have both worked with many buyers, many sellers in our own real estate transactions. And there's nothing more fun, there's nothing less fun than telling your buyer that their EMD is stuck. That is a terrible thing to have to tell your client, especially if they need that $2,000 or whatever the EMD money is, whatever the amount is. They need that to write an offer on the next home. And that money is now tied up. It's a very, very difficult conversation to have. And
hey,
the
one more thing, Paul, by the way, the sellers that are doing this are turning around and putting the home on the market while they're holding the money up for the buyer.
Yeah.
And they're going out and relisting it and selling the home, and it's even closed, and they're still not willing to.
We're dealing with one right now where the seller that is refusing to release the EMD has already closed and moved into their new home. And they're holding somebody's money hostage from the transaction over here. And now we're in the point where they're both talking to attorneys, and we're talking I think about $1,500 is what we're talking about here. And there's nothing that we can do. We've tried every single negotiation. We have done everything except for write a check ourselves. We've done everything we can. But so what we're doing right now is I'm working with Eric Graham to develop like a document or a sheet or a guide so we can give to our clients in that very rare, really frustrating scenario, where to show them just how they go through this process with small claims. Because the last thing we want to do is get ourselves into the situation, and then all you do is just go, I guess you got to go to small claims. So, hey, good luck. Wish you guys the best. Let me know if you want to see another house. That's probably the last house they're going to see with you. So you want to be helpful. So we're going to try and build a guide to show people not exactly what to say or do, but sort of the process of how to get it done.
Okay. Hey, Paul, I think we've covered the areas that I wanted to cover today. I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I'm good.
I think the final advice that we would probably give here is that if you can spend a couple $100s of your own money to make your client feel heard, valued, listened to, and you can resolve it for a few $100s, we would tell you to do that every single time. We're doing that as a brokerage on a lot of occasions with agents when we have issues like this, where we can do these types of things. It's how I've done it with my own business. Greg's done it with his own business and sales. The top agents throughout the company are pulling out their checkbook to make these problems go away. Because the last thing you want to do is be that agent who is just sort of letting everything go. Like, try and avoid getting to a lawsuit if possible, right? Every single time. So I'm just encouraging you to think creatively to help your clients avoid lawsuits, help people get out of lawsuits.
Number two, verify the EMDs. Whether you're on the seller side or the buy side would be the second bit of advice. The third bit of advice would be when you're talking with your buyers and you mentioned the EMD, if you know what, it would behoove you to mention there are times when the sellers are difficult and we have a struggle, and the only way to get that money back is through small claims. If you go over that up front and then it happens, well, then you're the hero. If you don't talk about it and it happens, you know where that leaves you.
Mm-hmm.
So Alrighty?
And if you need help, if you find yourself in one of these situations, our broker support team and Deal Doctor team are always available. You can call any one of the phone numbers you see listed and ask for the Deal Doctors or a broker support person, myself or Greg, and we will try to help you navigate whatever situation you're in. So there you have it.
Hey, thanks, guys.
All right, guys, take care. Have a good one.